to the Sugar and Spikes podcast, a show for everyone trying to navigate business and life without losing their minds. I'm Des, a coach and consultant who is entirely overeducated, habitually overdressed, and obnoxiously honest.
And I'm Tammy. I'm a psychologist. Was I supposed to say more?
You know what? Enough said. We talk about mindset, mental health, and making it all work in the big, bad business world.
One quick note. We may be mental health professionals, but we're not your mental health professionals.
So, enjoy the show! All right, guys, welcome to another episode of the Sugar and Spikes podcast. And this week is we're changing things up a bit. We have, I guess, not necessarily a special guest. She is very special, but she's actually now for season 2 a regular contributor. Noelle, with my interview buddy, is joining us today.
Hi, guys.
For those of you that don't know, she's the founder of an amazing company, My Interview Buddy. Do you want to tell folks about what it is before we get into the episode and everything?
Yeah, so My Interview Buddy is an interview platform, or it helps people do better interviews on both sides of the table. So I help candidates get prepared for major interviews, negotiation meetings, do resume reviews all online, and I also help businesses on the hiring and onboarding, so that on both sides of the table we can have a better experience with starting a new job.
Mm-hmm. And what's really cool about My Interview Buddy and why I kind of fell in love with it was it's a tech first company. Like there are so many businesses that start out as like service first, product first, and this has such a big tech focus. So once I heard about it, I was like, brilliant. Love it. And we've had her, like, you've been on the podcast before, like you're very much a regular. And yeah, for season 2, because of everything that she's doing and in terms of, tackling the diversity issues, especially like within the tech sector, brought her on as a regular contributor. So every week, we started that last week, and every week kind of going forward, she'll have her own blurb in the podcast. But this week, because Tammy is sick, she was my go-to gal, so you guys didn't have to listen to me talk for 20 minutes.
Well, I'm gonna have to meet Tammy because last time she had an emergency too. So I'm gonna have to get to know her because I hear she's amazing and I love hearing her on the podcast. So
yeah, well, we're talking about doing a Nashville trip, so it'll be like all
awesome.
4 of us: me, Tammy, you, and Peyton, and others.
I'm down. Let's do it.
So good. So this week, one of the things that just seemed very natural when we were talking about kind of topics and everything was this idea of networking. And I know I've talked about it a bit on the podcast before, especially since I'm a painful introvert. Like, I mean, says the girl with a podcast and like so many social media, like I make my living by running social, like, and I'm such an introvert, but I'm such a huge proponent of in-person networking. And you, Noelle, just got to do one of like the most amazing. You got to go to one of the most amazing events.
So amazing.
Yeah. So why don't you kind of kick it off with kind of your experience?
Yeah. So, I mean, just like I'm an introvert too. And it seems like networking is something that should be something that's very difficult for introverts, but it's like one of those things you just have to build the muscle and it's great. But what I did was, so I became a fellow for NPR's How I Built This Summit. So listeners, so if you listen to, or if you don't listen to, NPR has a great podcast called How I Built This, and it's all about the builders of these amazing companies. So WeWork, Airbnb, Carol's Daughter, on and on and on. And they do interviews with these amazing founders, and they talk about everything, like how their businesses fell apart and when they weren't doing so good and how they built it into these big giant companies. So they were having their very first summit, and I became
Mhm.
one of their fellows for it. There was 40 of us out of 500 applicants, and got to go for free. So it's in San Francisco. It was amazing, and the entire event was incredible. I got to
Mhm.
listen to these amazing speakers. But what NPR did a really great job with was making sure that there was plenty of networking opportunities.
Mhm.
So that first night that we were there, it was people from all over the world coming together, but everyone had the same mission of building their company.
Mhm.
And they did a really good job of picking out the fellows because it was a very diverse group, and we got to like mingle in with everybody. But it was so cool. So I got to speak over with, the CEO of Bar 3, which is a great fitness company. And I
Mhm.
got to speak over with Lisa Price, the former CEO of Carol's Daughter. But even without that, I got to talk to amazing founders that are making great tech companies that are
Mhm.
changing lives, people who are inventors, and I got to pick their brain. I got to
Mhm.
pitch to people who were, in this multimillionaire space and giving me feedback on, my pitch. And I got to give them, it was just so magical. And it was all about just being authentic to who I was and
Mhm.
just putting myself out there, because once I became, at first I was really nervous because
Mhm.
I'm going, oh my gosh, everybody's going to know that I don't belong here. I saw all the fellows are having these like really amazing companies. Like, would they think mine's amazing enough? Like, are they going to know that I'm not, you know, I don't know, just this whole imposter thing.
Like
And
you
I'm
don't
thinking
have
about,
funding and stuff like that.
yeah,
Yeah.
exactly, exactly. I mean, there's people that were there that've been on Shark Tank, and I'm like, I'm
Mhm.
not there, or really that interested in Shark Tank. But regardless, I was
Mhm.
just a little intimidated. But I found as soon as I just started being myself, people were really interested in the company. But what NPR did that was really interesting was that they give everybody these little name tags, and it said, tell me about a time and I'm gonna talk about my brain tumor story all day long because it's interesting enough to get people to talk to me. So then ask me about my brain tumor, and people are like, holy crap, yeah, tell me about it. And I'm like, great. And I start talking about it. And then they're like, oh, and now what do you do? I'm like, I own this great company. And like,
Mhm.
we're like cheering for each other. So it was a really great opportunity just to meet people and be ourselves. It was
Mhm.
so cool.
Those name tags are really cool. I screenshotted because you posted a picture of it, and I took a screenshot of it because I'm helping plan an event in April, and I was like, "Oh my god, this has to go on the Pinterest board." So what I th and we didn't talk about this beforehand, but what I was just thinking and what I'd love to kind of dissect and go over is not just the event, but your process going from before the event to after the event, because not that there's necessarily a right or wrong way to network
Yeah.
and make use of an event like that, but I was watching how you did it and I thought it was fabulous and very like it's stuff that we all go through. Like
Mhm.
um in the times leading up, you were posting message boards and everything. So
Mhm.
let's talk about how you prepared to make the best time because how I built this was only what a day and a half.
Yeah.
Like
Hmm.
it wasn't like a week-long conference and no one wants a week-long conference because dear
Hmm.
God. Um
Yeah.
but you knew you had essentially a day, give or take,
Mhm.
to make connections and everything. How did you prep for that?
Yeah. So the first thing that I did was, as soon as we got the okay to post about the event, and they actually didn't give us the green light until like 4 days before the event. And when that happened, I started posting everywhere that I
Mhm.
became a fellow, and this is the event, and I hope to see you there. So I had a few people who follow me on social media that were like, I want to make sure to connect with you when I'm in San Francisco. So it was just
Mhm.
like became an opportunity just from posting it on social media.
Mhm.
But before I did that, I actually followed every single speaker
Mhm.
on Twitter or Instagram, wherever they were more prevalent and were
Mhm.
posting all the time.
You
That way,
cyberstalk them. Yes,
mhm.
yes.
That way, if I ever, that way, if I ever ran into them, I could be like, "Oh, I saw your post, and it
No,
was so
totally,
cool.
yeah.
I really like that too." Exactly.
Mhm.
So I did that. And then when we got there, a lot of these networking events, they have an app where it'll tell you all the attendees that are there, and you can message people and like see what everyone's doing. So I took a look at the attendee list, see who's companies kind of aligned with what I was doing, and
Mhm.
I looked for those people out. Like I didn't avoid everybody else to get those people, but I wanted to make sure I got to have some one-on-one time with those people so I can ask some
Mhm.
questions and connect a little bit.
Mhm.
Um, but I think that what was most important was while I was there, I just made sure to give time to everyone who had a story that just really spoke out to me. I didn't shut anybody off. I just wanted to be open. So just like
Mhm.
by being open and like seeing that there was a space, like if somebody was out there like by themselves, I would take a few seconds and spend some time with them.
Mhm.
And then when that conversations seem to trail off, I would say, okay, I can't wait to hear more about that. I don't want to monopolize your time, so I'm going to go and talk to you later. Look forward to hearing about everything that you're doing.
Oh
So
my
that
god,
let
that's
me like,
such a good out. That's so good.
yes. So I would, and go and speak over to somebody else because it's true too. Like, even if I'm loving the conversation, I don't want to monopolize their
Yeah.
time. But if I'm not enjoying the conversation, I can use that same line and it works really great.
Mhm.
So I just kind of went over to person and started to get to know people and ask some questions. So I had some questions already formulated in my mind.
Mhm.
It's my interview buddy, so I'm kind of obsessed with questions. And I asked everybody, well, what are you building and why do you love it? And just, it's a basic question, but it was enough to like give people enough passion to get to know
Mhm.
them a little bit deeper. So that was really great. And then I also followed the group. So there's a group put together for people who are interested in going to the event on Facebook. So I was pretty active on there. I
Mhm.
was sharing anything, like anytime I took a picture or something, I would go ahead and put that up on Instagram.
Mhm.
Um, I would I would tweet out like if there was a really good quote from somebody who was a speaker there,
Mhm.
I would live tweet. Like Katrina Lake had this really great quote when she was being interviewed, and she said, I don't want to be known as a great woman CEO. I want to be
Mhm.
known as a great CEO. And so I was like, perfect. Let me put that in quotations. I'll
Mhm.
go ahead and, mention her on it. And I just sent it out, and I had a few people that started to follow me from there. So where there was an opportunity, I would just go ahead and just try to find a way to authentically shine without being a creep about it. Because some of these networking events is real easy to be a creep.
Well, it's shining and it goes back to that idea of providing value, right? Which is something we hear every single day, provide value, provide value. But even in that, you heard a quote, you tweeted it out. In that moment, you went from being a consumer of the content to a content creator, and people are going to value that 10 times more than someone sitting in the audience and not doing anything.
Yeah, I think that's just a better approach of doing it. And I
Hmm.
think that just letting people know that you're there is cool. Some people were saying that because I was posting mostly on Facebook, and people were saying, I really felt like I was there. And that's the experience that I wanted to give.
Hmm.
But, the NPR sees something that I'm posting and wants to share it. Like, that's something that's good for my brand.
Hmm.
But it's good for people to know who couldn't go, but that were interested in going. Like, you never know who you're going to impact and who
Hmm.
you're going to want to connect with. So just take an opportunity.
Yeah. And it also helps like your team and stuff know what's going on. Like for folks that are in a 9 to 5 and if they go to a conference that their job is paid for and stuff like that, being active on the socials lets your team like know A, you're
Absolutely.
not screwing around. Not that anyone ever
Exactly.
would.
Oh
Um
yeah, but it's easy to, you
yeah.
have the free trip and you're in a
Mhm.
different state. My company paid for me to go. Even though I did this for my interview buddy, I
Mhm.
also they had some really great business development sessions.
Mhm.
So I pitched that out to my boss and I said, this is something that's going to really help me in this position. It's going to
Mhm.
help the company if I'm able to bring some new
Mhm.
ideas from these great thought leaders. Like, what do you think about sending me out?
Mhm.
So when everything was over, and this is so important when you're networking, guys, but like when this was all over, I put together a list of like everything that I learned and just like very brief sentences because my boss
Mhm.
doesn't have all day to read like a whole 2-page essay.
You're not gonna
But
stand up with a 20 slide PowerPoint and go through
yeah, I
it? No?
know.
Okay. I
He
mean,
doesn't want
that's
the
a
presentation.
new
He doesn't want
idea,
the
but
messy.
okay. Okay.
Mm-mm. So, so I just put together like a really short list of
Yeah.
not just what I learned, but like here's an idea of how we can use something I learned for the business.
Mhm.
And just from that, he's like, I don't understand. More people need to go to these events. Like everybody needs to go to something because
Mhm.
that's so cool. It's just, why not take the opportunity? So,
Events are essential. Events are so essential, like, within your industry and then within, like, your area of focus, right? Like,
mhm.
yeah. I mean,
There's
if
opportunity everywhere. It
yeah.
just makes sense. And you start local. You don't have to go across the country to go to a
Mm-mm.
great event. Like go to something that's seems interesting. And one thing I always think of, people think that they have to go to things that are just for their industry that they're in. And
Mhm.
then you kind of like you go to those events all the time and you're seeing the
Mhm.
same people. You're not really getting a lot. You're
Yeah.
getting a lot of the same information. You start going to things that just interest you, something you
Yeah.
want to learn a little bit more about. And then you start making connections there because if
Mhm.
you're already interested, somebody else that's really deep into that world doesn't
Mhm.
know about you at all. Like there's
Yeah.
so many more opportunities. And you can learn something different about how these different types of events are run because
Yeah.
like right after I was at NPR, I was at the Inc. 5000 event. And it
Mhm.
was like totally same exact premise. They're both conferences for entrepreneurs and their
Mhm.
team. Totally different events, like
Yeah.
completely different.
I mean, and that's what I was trying to say with, like, within your industry versus your area of interest, because like, I work mostly in fintech, right? Like,
Mhm.
that's the industry I'm in, but my area of interest, I would say, would be content stuff, so, like, the content marketing events, like, yes, I wanna go to that. Is it within the industry that I'm working? No, I mean, it connects with, like, my job and stuff, but I'm going to meet people that maybe not necessarily there's gonna be deals done with, but really good professional development and things like that. Like,
Mhm.
it doesn't have to
Mhm.
be completely tied in, and it doesn't have to be this whole, like, "Oh my god, why am I even here?" type of thing. Like, just something where you're like, "This helps with this," just
Yeah. No,
Mhm.
it's all related. Like
Yeah.
with my interview buddy, like I definitely have a female focus, so I can
Mhm.
go to, and there's a billion great women networking events,
Mhm.
and there are a million not so great women networking events.
Yep.
But I like to go to events that are focused on tech, where there
Mhm.
may not be a lot of women, but I'm going to learn a whole bunch.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll be able to work more on my business side that isn't just for women,
Yeah.
and be able to make those connections. But
Mhm.
what will I be able to bring into my business? Like I go into any event thinking, like, how is this going to help me? It's so much
Mhm.
more than just like the talking to people. Like, what am I going to get out of this event? Like, who am
Mhm.
I going to um, meet that's going to, tell me something new? Like, what am I going to be able to get from it? Because it's not just trading business cards. It's about
Mhm.
what happens after that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I
Mhm.
think that that's the part that gets missed. Like you'll add each other on LinkedIn, or
Yeah.
maybe you'll send an email, and then it's like, I don't even know who that person is like a year from now. Like there's no
Mhm.
point in that. It's to build relationships. And I
Mhm.
think that's so important for your career.
Yeah, and so many events have those networking times, and you mentioned that How I Built This had time set up and everything. One thing that I know back back in, like, my early days, and I know a lot of people struggle with, is like, well, what do I say during this? Like, how do I introduce myself? How do I carry on conversation, stuff like that. You and I talked beforehand, and I know you were doing a lot of, like, prep work kind of around that. Do you wanna talk about,
Yeah.
like, prepping your pitch and,
Mhm.
I mean, you've already alluded to that you had questions you were ready to ask and stuff like that.
Mhm.
How did you navigate the networking piece specifically, is so that you felt confident that you made those connections, because we are gonna talk about the awesome follow-up that you did
Yeah.
afterwards.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, like, how did you own those networking times
Yeah.
without being, like, super official and robotic too, right?
Yeah, because you just come up. I'm Noelle, and I work for.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is true. So this is gonna sound a little cheesy, but like I'm big on compliments, and I only do them if I really mean them. But
Mhm.
I'm in San Francisco. Everyone's wearing like cool and funky stuff. Great glasses. Hi,
Mhm.
my name's Noelle. Like just like something, just like a quick icebreaker. Since they had those little icebreaker name tags, like that was an easy one where
Oh,
I can
yeah.
be like, oh, so tell me about the time that you whatever, and then I would ask them a question. I think it's important to like obviously be aware of your social cues. Or is somebody look like they're in a deep conversation, like maybe that's not the right time to jump in there, because that
Mhm.
happened to me a lot, where somebody would I'm like in the middle of talking to somebody, and it seems like really interesting, and they're like, hi, and then I have to start all over again because I'll say, what do you do? I'm like,
Mhm.
great. I was just talking to her about that for 15 minutes, and
Mhm.
now I'm going to start this over again. Okay, great. So I think it's
Mhm.
just like paying attention to what people are saying, and
Mhm.
then seeing where your in is. If
Yeah.
you're not comfortable with networking at all, look for the other people that are not comfortable with networking.
Yeah.
Like those people that are like just like out there and they're on their phones, like just
Mhm.
go over and say like, man, networking is really weird and I'm not really comfortable with it. Like,
Mhm.
can I stick by you for a minute? Just like be honest and be yourself, because that's what people are interested in.
Yeah.
Um, the people that just go straight to business and don't seem to have a personality and just like sell, 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 those aren't your people. So they're going to
No.
make you feel off guard. So don't
Mhm.
be that person. Then it's okay to walk away from that person.
Mhm.
But then with the follow up, you have a really great conversation with somebody and they give you your card. I mean, first of all, write a note right away because you're going to get a bunch of cards. You're not going to remember who that person is in like
Mhm.
2 hours. But then send them over a note and it's like, I had so much fun talking to you about this. Like, take like good notes so that you can like talk about what was the conversation that you guys had.
Yeah.
Like, because if you just say, we met at this event and she does blah, like, no, like, what did you guys really talk about? So I'll get into
Mhm.
like the weeds of like, it was really great to talk to you about that one thing. That sushi was super good.
Yeah.
Um, I would love to be able to work with you sometime, or like, I would love to see how I could help you with blah, 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 blah. Like, there's
Mhm.
just an opportunity there. And then I will follow up with them if I don't get a response. But like, I try to keep them connected. I do LinkedIn right away for everybody because it's
Yeah.
just easier for me to track to see what they're doing day to day,
Mhm.
as opposed to email. But it's just following up and being authentic.
Yeah. And then I know, like, you had a couple follow-ups that turned into not necessarily pitches, but you kind of saw the spread, right, of easy follow-ups, LinkedIn,
Mhm.
that's where the
Mhm.
conversation kind of ended, give or take, with an email or
Mhm.
whatever, and then
Mhm.
there were, like, times that led to a phone call, you know?
Mhm. Yeah.
Tell us about like, that jump, like, how did you get people on the phone? And I don't care, like, if it landed in clients or whatever, but, like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
getting on the phone with someone after an event is
Uh-huh.
huge,
Mhm.
hard, like, it feels overwhelming for me, and I've done it, and I don't like doing it, even though it's really good, right? Like,
Yeah.
so yeah.
Yeah. So what happened with me was I just finished doing my pitch section and session, and then somebody came up and somebody who knew this woman that just sat at her table said, "Oh my gosh, you're gonna love what Noelle's doing because you were saying that you're having such a hard time hiring people." And she's
Mhm,
like, "Oh, so what do you do?" And so I just like told her, what I do, and then
mhm,
she said, "I have a really hard time doing blah," and I just had a conversation with her.
mhm,
And then she said, "Okay, well, give me your card." And I said, "Great." And then when I got back, I hadn't gotten anything from her. So I shot her out an email saying, "Hey, you had that question about that hard time that you're having with hiring.
mhm,
And I was just wondering how that was going. Let me
mhm,
know if you have any other questions." And I just kind of left that there. And then she responded with, "Oh my gosh, I'm so glad that you sent me a message. I forgot all about it. Let's go ahead and get on the phone like right now." I'm like,
mhm,
"Okay, let's go ahead and get it."
yeah,
But I found that it was just talking to people without looking to get a gain was
mhm,
helpful. Like when I was able to give more than I was looking to
yeah,
receive, those were better conversations.
mhm,
Like I had another conversation with the woman. We were doing like our pitch circle, and she said, "Okay, well, who's your top competition?" So I talked about one of my biggest competitors, and I said, but their CEOs all over the
mm,
place, and like
mhm,
this and that, and I'm not really sure that that in a few years we're going to be a strong competition because I feel like we're
mhm,
really going to outshine. And she's like, "Okay, I'm glad that you asked because I know the CEO of that company, and he pitched to me, and your pitch was better than his." And I was like, "What?" I wasn't expecting any of that, but just like by being myself, by being honest, like
mhm,
that worked out really great. Now I could have totally, on the flip side of that, I could have totally made her feel uncomfortable. That could have been somebody that she invested with,
mhm,
but that's the risk that you take when you're going to come to something and be authentic and be
mhm,
vulnerable. Is
yeah,
sometimes you can make people go in the other direction. But like, I was just like, this is what my experience is. And through that, like, I don't know what kind of opportunity will come through that, but
Mhm.
you never know. That could be a potential investor.
Yeah, I mean, authenticity is just so important, and it's in those moments where, like, it's those side comments, or even if it's just two people being like, "God, I really hate networking," then there's this, like, alignment that comes into play where you know that the other person gets you, right?
Yes.
Like,
Mhm.
if that person hadn't responded the way they did to what you said about the competition, then that's just like an early indicator that it wouldn't have been a good working relationship. But because you guys see eye to eye on that level in this
Yeah.
authentic way, that's extra fodder for maybe there's like something there. Like it's
Mhm.
just to do business, you have to connect on a human level. And if you don't connect on a human level, it's pointless.
No,
Like, yeah.
yeah, absolutely. Because people can see through when you're not being authentic. People
Mhm.
get tired of it right away. You
Mhm.
might have something that's great to offer and it may hook them in. Your elevator pitch might be super on point, but like if
Mhm.
you don't have much to offer outside of that, people will start looking for somebody else that does something similar that they get
Mhm.
along with better because they're looking to work with humans.
Mhm.
So I've learned that quick. I mean, I've been doing this whole networking thing since I went to my first one. I didn't even have a job. I went for free booze
Mm.
and hoping to make some connections.
Mhm.
I made some business cards and I got a job offer at this networking event where I didn't know anybody because it's
Mhm.
just like it's just being yourself and then talking about what you have to offer and having some freaking passion about it
Mhm.
when it comes up. Because if you seem very blasé about what you do, it's okay to feel blasé about event meetings because
Mhm.
not all of them are great. But like if you go and you're like, oh, so what do you do? And it's like, I work for blah blah blah.
Mhm.
Cool. That's somebody that's not going to be a good connection. But if
Yeah.
you can say, this is what I do. Or when I was looking for a job, I'm like,
Mhm.
well, this is what I love to do.
Mhm.
And people, oh, great.
Yeah. And
Tell
people
me
are
more.
watching. Like, I had that experience very recently where, like, feedback that was given to me was like, the way you talk about what you're doing right now is just so different and so much more passionate and positive and all these things than, other times. Cause in small industry, right? Even if you change jobs, you may end up at like the same industry events. Um,
Oh,
and like people are watching and they notice and they comment and it just like it comes through, you know? I
hmm
don't know.
hmm
Yeah.
yeah, it just comes through.
Going back to the networking piece, one thing is I know all of this has been around in person, which I am such a huge supporter of, especially since we live
hmm
in such a digital world.
hmm
And I do want to like give space for the fact that you can make real connections on the interwebs and there can be authentic networking that happens on the interwebs.
hmm
Like
Yeah,
that's actually how we connected.
absolutely. Networking online is my jam. It's like my
Mhm.
most favorite thing. I
Yeah.
love it
Yeah.
because,
But
yeah, go ahead.
I was just going to say I think it's a bit not necessarily more nuanced, but it's definitely different than networking in person.
hmm
It's definitely a slower burn.
hmm
And it's very much one of those things. I think it kind of I'm just thinking this through right now. It's such a clear example of how we are like our personal brand because people that run in those same circles, like they'll see your name before they realize what it is exactly you do. Right? Like they'll
hmm
get a vibe and everything before
Yeah.
they really know what happens.
Yeah. Yeah. That's true. People have, I mean, I think with online, I mean, you're spending twice as maybe three times the amount of time online to
Mhm.
make those relationships, but you have to show up in those spaces like pretty consistently, not just like with your time, but like what you're bringing to the table has to be
Mhm.
pretty consistent. Because when it's off, then people are like, well, who is she? Because I was pretty sure that the person like she did this. Like
Mhm.
you'll see this happen all the time in groups where somebody might have like a great post every once in a while, but then they just put like really salesy things, like the voice doesn't sound quite right, and you're
Mhm.
like, I don't. that I don't really vibe with her anymore.
Yeah.
But what I'm saying is like, so it takes a longer time to establish yourself
Mhm.
on social media. But once you do and you show up consistently, those relationships that you make are so important.
Mhm.
But it's making sure that you're in the right group and that you're bringing that right energy to there,
Mhm.
and then people know to like tag you
Yeah.
on something that comes up.
Mhm.
Like, people know to tag me on something that has to do with resume and interviewing, even though there may be other people that do something. Well, nobody does what I do exactly, but somebody might do something that's similar that might be able to
Mhm.
help, but they don't get tagged as often because I show up consistently and they know, like, oh, you know, your vibe's going to match with her vibe. So that's
Yeah.
going to be good.
Mhm.
Yeah. So you can have a lot of people listed that all do like one specific thing, but like certain people get more attention. And yeah, they do post more, but it's like, what are they posting that people really like? Because there
Mhm.
may be people that post 7 times a day, and because they're kind of salesy, or it's like one of those, motivational things. And I
Mhm.
don't want somebody to try to motivate me all day long. Like, who are you?
Yeah.
You
Well,
are not Oprah. So like,
and I think, like, with online networking, it's also it's another example of, like, it's about who you know and getting connected with people that will connect you with who you need to know.
hmm hmm
Like, I feel like using us as an example, right? I don't think we
hmm
really connected until Peyton kind of put us together and was
yeah.
like, "You need to talk to her." I
Mhm.
think she told us both at, like, different times, like,
Yeah,
"Des, you need to talk to Noelle. Noelle, you need to talk to Des." And then it's like,
yeah.
"Okay, well, and then if this person signs off,
Mhm,
then for one, that's cred, and
mhm,
also, like, that's that's about building a relationship beyond the get to know me posts, beyond the sales posts, beyond those things where it's talk, learn, going back to give more than you ask, you
mhm.
know? Um,
Yeah,
I don't know. I think that the personal referrals, because I know for a while I was getting bogged down by everyone's tagging these coaches in and they're not tagging me, and like getting in that
yeah.
realm and everything.
Mhm,
But then when someone does like such warm handoff
mhm.
for maybe you guys don't work together, but get to know them, right? Like you need to be in
Yeah.
each other's worlds. That message to me, like, speaks louder
Oh,
than,
yeah.
like, a simple tag because that like, in business world, right? Like, if we have business leads and stuff, I don't know, I'm sure you do this, like,
Yeah.
the warm handoff, like, the warm intros. "Hey, John Smith, I'm introducing you to Susie because Susie does this and meets your needs. You guys go off and talk," like,
Mhm. Yeah.
that's the
It makes
professional way to do it.
It is. It is. And when you get one of those, because it's not the language that everybody kind of speaks. A lot of people think, well, just like a tag is enough or whatever. But when somebody takes that time, I
Mhm.
mean, it's like impossible to not feel grateful for it that
Mhm.
somebody thought of me, and this is like a possible potential for a lead. But this is also somebody that, if it's not a lead, it's might be somebody that I want to, have in my digital Rolodex, like, because you
Yeah,
never know who they're connected with. There's
exactly.
just so many connections that's available online. So
Mhm.
when somebody hands somebody off to me, I mean, I treasure that person. I want to treat them well, because I know that they'll go back to their friend and say, like, what, like, why did you tell her? Like, why
Mhm.
did you hand me off to her? She's a mess. So I take a lot of pride when those come over to me, because
Mhm.
it means so much. And I think that that's something I'd like to see a little bit more of in some
Mhm.
of these groups. But I really treasure it when it does happen.
Mhm. And you are you're one of the moderators for Slam Squad Bosses, one of
Hmm.
the one of the most kick-ass groups,
Yeah.
for female entrepreneurs.
Hmm.
L Talk about, like, your role with facilitating the growth of that group and making sure that there is space for real relationships and real networking besides just, like, the, you know, sales post, drop and
Yeah.
run type of thing.
Yeah. So what happened was when Peyton took over that group from a great author, Carol Alaba,
Mhm.
and noticed that the group, when she started it, when Peyton first joined, it was like very focused on helping one another. And
Mhm.
then it started to get more into like just sales. So she, myself, and our friend,
Oh, now you're frozen.
any of these long, like
Mhm.
what's something that everybody hates that people complain about,
Mhm.
and we just started asking questions to people, and then we started to make new rules. So I follow those to a T. I'm always in the group and seeing if anybody's breaking them, but like some of them are those like really long run on posts that don't seem to mean anything. They're just
Mhm.
filled with emojis. That's not my jam. So we made a rule that those aren't allowed, and if you do more than one of those, then we're going to kick you out.
Mhm.
The people who just like will just like share like a live video,
Mhm.
and it doesn't seem to have any relation to what they're doing. They're just obviously trying to sell something. That's an
Yeah.
out. So it's like you need to be able to give more than you ask.
Mhm.
Peyton does a really good job with making sure to put questions in there that are really important to women business owners. Well, she can just be like honest and say, I made over 100K this year. This is what it actually meant. This is what my actual take home was, and it's
Mhm.
not as much as you think that it is. And to have an open conversation about things that
Mhm.
are on the top of our minds, but we don't talk about.
Yeah.
So anything that I think of that I think could be helpful, and I'll always try to come from a place of vulnerability. And I'm like, I'm struggling with this one thing. I just can't get it. Can anyone help me understand?
Mhm.
And that might be in somebody that I end up hiring, but other people can see their answers to like my question, and that might be somebody that they want to hire.
Yeah.
Because somebody sharing their knowledge in a way that they're not just like, oh, PM me for more details, and that's all they write.
Mhm.
That doesn't give. But if somebody gives a great answer, that's somebody that's going to get referred from other people, even if they
Mhm.
don't get used by somebody else. They'll say, oh, I remember she had that great response to Noelle's question
Mhm.
that was on that one very specific thing. She's your girl to go to, because I haven't seen anybody else respond like that before.
Mhm.
So there's this opportunity to do that. And we've tried a few different things, like doing like only tech questions on Tuesday and like keeping like MLMs on Monday. And honestly, like a lot of the sales stuff just stopped except for the one sales day, because people were getting what they needed out of the group. And
Mhm.
there's still some work that needs to be done, but we want this to be a place where entrepreneurs can talk about their businesses and be honest about what's really happening, and not have to
Mhm.
show off this I'm super motivational and inspiring
Mhm.
all the time thing, because it's just not real. So we
Yeah.
want people to come in real with their real questions, and be seen.
Mhm. Yeah. It's a fabulous group.
I really like it.
Yeah.
It's been really good, and I've made so many connections through it. It's
Mhm.
been, really
Yeah.
helpful. And I really want to make sure, from at least what I do, that people have a place to go to you know, ask questions that are really important to their
Mhm.
business, and share things. Like I just shared, oh, did you guys know that has this new program called Atlas, and you can get your LLC and all this stuff, and you can get it done for women, and it's like totally free. It's
Mhm.
$500 fee, and you can get it for free. Like, and just like share it, and people, oh my gosh, I didn't know that that was a thing. But
Mhm.
just sharing these things can really help.
Mhm.
Um, Companies grow. So if there's something, I'm not going to get a gain from that. I don't work for Stripe, but you never know, and it's just good to be able to give wherever you can.
Mhm. So good. Okay. I'm getting a notice that my connection is unstable. So, I feel like we should maybe wrap it up before everything crashes and
Yeah.
burns. Because we've had enough tech issues.
Okay.
Okay. Before my internet burns up, where can people find you?
You can find me at myinterviewbuddy.com.
Mhm.
And you can find me on Instagram if you're looking to get an interview resume tips, at my interview buddy on Instagram.
Great. Thank you.
Thanks. All right. Bye.